That was The 19th Galaxy, an original virtuoso piece written by our guest today, composer, pianist Reginald Robinson. Welcome to Black Muse, Reginald.
Thank you for having me.
It is such an honor to get a chance to spend some time with you. And let's talk a little bit about The 19th Galaxy. That is a remarkable piece. It's a piece that you wrote in homage to many of the early jazz musicians.
Yes. Pioneers.
Who are some of the ones that we could hear?
Here, Fats Waller. From there, from Fats Waller, it goes directly to Jelly Roll Morton. So, from Jelly Roll Morton, it goes to Joe Jordan. So it's like. This here, that's Willie the Lion Smith. He would have to do those kind of rhythms, you know. So I throw that in, but this, that kind of fingering is, you know, I heard Jelly Roll Morton describe Tony Jackson's playing in 1938. So I threw that in. Here. Walking Tenth is Mary Lou Williams. So, then to Jelly Roll Morton. But you have to slow that down a lot, you know. Jelly Roll Morton. Then Art Tatum, he had this way of putting a passage in, a run where it sounded like it could be out of time, but it was always on beat, you know. So James P. Johnson. He was this. Well, there's more. I go up here, you know, Duke Ellington. From Duke Ellington, it goes to Spencer Williams. Let's see. Many people may not know Spencer Williams, but he was a great composer back in the earlier part of the last century. And one of his famous tunes was a piece called I Found a New Baby. Yeah, so I put that in there. I just put the chord change. And that phrase is da, 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 that comes. I was thinking of Charles Luckiett Roberts. Yeah, he was a great stride pianist who he predated James P. Johnson and guys like that. But he was more so closer in age to U.B. Blake. Yeah, those were like the original stride players in New York. Yeah.
Not very often when you think of U.B. Blake, when we think of ragtime music, but you've just given us a history of all these major artists.
Yeah.
And you talked about most of these artists spent some time in New York, particularly in Harlem, around the turn of the century. Is that fair to say, early?
I would say around the turn of the century, there were musicians, and the black musicians were in Harlem, but there were a lot of the ragtime music was really being shaped in the Midwest. Yeah, around that time. Not to say there was no musicians in Harlem, but there was like the people like Scott Joplin and Tom Turpin. They were all in the Midwest. Yeah, Louis Chauvin and those guys. Yeah.
You are known around the world as the leading proponent of ragtime music.
Wow.
And can you tell me, how did this journey, this wonderful musical experience start for you? When did you get an interest in ragtime music?
Kind of started before I knew it. I think I had a liking for music, and it was my auntie who reminded me around 1979 that I was drawn to the electronic organ that she purchased. Yeah, and I had totally forgot about this. And to me, it seemed magical to be able to. I saw her play one day. She sits down and makes these keys come to life. Music comes from the keys. I was like, wow! To me, it was fascinating. So I would ask. They live right next. My auntie lived next door to us, and it was a family building. So I would always ask if I could come over and play on the organ, and she would have a son. She'd say, "Okay, sure, you can. You have to get the permission from your mom, though, right?" So I would get the permission from my mom, and I would come over there. But my cousin would always stand. She told him to watch me. That was her son, stand watch me, make sure I wasn't banging on the keys or anything. So I can remember him standing back watching me. He wasn't that much older than I was. But so I totally forgot about that. That was my first, I guess, moment for music. Being drawn to music, and the ragtime, that was always there. I always heard this melody. I grew up hearing that on the ice cream truck, so I never knew what it was, but I knew it was music I liked. I didn't really think anything of it, but it's just, I didn't think it was anything special I wanted to play or anything. So when I heard it I don't want to get ahead of myself because my brother started listening to old music around 1983, 84, around that time. Everybody was listening at that time. Was listening to Prince and Michael Jackson. Of course, we were listening to that.
How old were you?
Around that time, I was around 11. But I heard him. I heard my brother listening to his music, and he started gravitating towards big band music. People like Glenn Miller and Tommy Dorsey and Artie Shaw and people like that. And at that time we lived in the Austin neighborhood on the west side.
So are you a native Chicago?
I am, yes. And
west side.
Yeah, yeah. So I became familiar with this music. These were like some of the musicians he was listening to on the old time radio broadcast. Right along with Jimi Hendrix. He was listening to Jimi Hendrix as well. So after a while, I really started appreciating this music. I could see that it was people took it serious back then. And so that was my introduction to the old. Really, I'll say to the old music, starting to take a liking to it. And one day we had an assembly. This was some years later, about 1986. School had an assembly. I was at Robert Emmett Elementary School. on the west side, and musicians came to my school. It was a group of musicians, about 5 musicians, and they put on a show called From Bach to Bebop, and it was about 5 musicians. Well, I was excited because they told us about it the week before, and we got like the flyers program. I think it was going to be on the next Friday. So this was 1986. I think it was around maybe in like September, October, and so I was excited because I was listening to all this big band music, and I was just excited to see. I wanted to see the brass. I remember thinking that, like, man, I want to see how the brass looks like. This is like the real. These are like a real band is coming, you know. And I don't think the other children in school, I don't really think they cared about that. But my mind, I was thinking about this, you know, because I had also discovered there was a group in that same area from listening to the radio. There was a group that performed back in the 1920s, and I was really getting interested in old-timey stuff, you know. And so this was around right like a year after that Al Capone vault thing that we were all So I found that fascinating. I was like, man, this is Chicago, and this is what, you know, like trying to find out what I could. But there was a group called the Austin High Gang, and that was Gene Krupa and some other, you know, these were the white players that was leading up to the big band in the 1930s. So that fascinated me too, because we were living in neighborhood, and my older brothers went to Austin High School. But anyway, so these guys had come there, and I believe one of them was Orbit Davis. Orbit Davis, and I come to find this out later. You know, it was a bunch of musicians I worked with years later. But they put on a show called From Bach to Bebop, and about the middle of the show, I heard this same song, you know,
Right,
and I was like, oh man, that's that song that I hear on the Ice Cream Truck. But now I had a style for it. It was called ragtime, you know, and so I was like, wow, you know, I knew the name ragtime, but I didn't know where I knew it from before. Maybe it was because that movie that came out in like 1980, they advertised it on TV, you know. But that was my introduction to ragtime. That this particular song is a style called ragtime, and I immediately drew to it. I was like, that's what I want to play after that assembly, because I already knew my brother was playing, trying to play like big band, pop. He was playing all kinds of stuff, trying to do rock and roll type stuff. Anything, you know, he was just really inspired, you know. And I was thinking, like, I don't have a piano or anything at home, but that's what I want. I think I want to get into music, and I think I want to play ragtime. And so on my way home, I remember walking up Washington Street, you know, Robert Emmet is like Washington, Central, Pine, and what's the other street? Madison. Sits on between those streets, right? So I would come home, walk up Washington, and we were like right there between Menard and Mayfield. So that was a long walk. And I had time to think. I was like, man. Well, I think it was Friday too. And so I was like, what was that kind of, you know, I almost forgot what the title of the style, you know, the style was, what it was called. And I almost panicked. I know this may not be interesting, but I'm just saying it anyway, just for the record. I almost panicked because I was like, I don't know what the name of that style. What's the name of the style? Something told me, like, write it down so you don't have to think about it. So I remember stopping on the way and wrote down the word ragtime, and get home and thinking I'm gonna look in my family's encyclopedias, and there was nothing there, because these like ragtime was not something that was like we're the oldest set of encyclopedias.
Still, it wasn't there.
It was not there. Yep. So I waited until Monday to get back to school, because we you know, in our classroom we had at the back of the class we had a collection of encyclopedias, more up to date encyclopedias. So I was able to look there and find ragtime, and from there, the ragtime said, "See Scott Joplin," and I was like, "Who is Scott Joplin?" I don't even know if his name was mentioned in that assembly. Yeah, because I think they were really just trying to move on to the next thing, you know. But so I discovered Scott Joplin looking in the encyclopedia, and I was like, wow. He mentioned this is his songs, you know, the Entertainer, and they said his most famous piece was a Maple Leaf Rag, and I was thinking maybe that piece that I heard, maybe that's Maple Leaf Rag. I was thinking that for a while,
Right.
And but it also mentioned in the encyclopedia that his music had been featured in a movie called The Sting. And then I recalled that. I was like, oh, okay. I remember hearing about this thing. That was something my parents watched, but I didn't care. I never cared about it. And
So did you search out? I mean, did you want to find out more of his music then?
oh yeah, I was.
So what did you? How did you do? How did you go about
Oh
finding?
man, it was not having any money. The thing was, the only thing I could do was look, search the radio, and I tried to find music, Scott Joplin's music, on the same stations my brother was listening to. No luck, because they was like old time radio, so they went back to like the 1930s and 40s, and Jack Benny's radio show, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, kind of like, I didn't know where to go. I just started going to the library and getting books on ragtime. And one of those college stations, one day I was flipping the station. Back then we used to have a tape recorder, cassette tapes, and I had my tape recorder like on standby in case anything came on that I sounded like ragtime. I was ready,
Right.
And I remember that some band came on, some Dixieland band came on the radio, and they were playing some piece by Joe Jordan, and it was one of his. I forget the name of the piece. I think that Teasing Rag. Yeah, and I was like, oh wow, that was ragtime,
So
that was a piece of ragtime music.
So when you started, you played more than just Scott. As great as Scott Joplin was, you played other ragtime composers as well.
Oh, not at that time. I was just discovering it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was discovering that music, and so the biggest revelation for me, the biggest book that revealed everything, was a book that we had in our school, in the library, school's library. That had it was something like the Negro in art and all this and it. I mean, everybody was in. Bessie Smith. This is when I was introduced to all these artists all at once. Scott Joplin, James B. Johnson, U.B. Blake, and Noble Sissle. Everybody's pictures were in this book, including sculptures by artists of that time.
So how did you make the connection? You are this young musician who wants to be a pianist, but you didn't have a piano. So how did you remedy that?
Oh, I stayed on my parents. I was like immediately that day after the assembly, I got home and I was like bugging my mother, really my mom, because she was at home. My father would come in from work and lay down or whatever. But my mother, I was bugging her about getting the piano. I was like, my older brother Bud, and like Bud, he got a guitar. And I was like, man, I want a piano. My mom was like, well, I don't know if we can really afford that. So she eventually saw that I really was really serious about wanting to play music, play the piano. So she eventually got me. It was a family keyboard, but it was like a little toy like this, like a Casio type thing. And I would, I started trying to teach myself how to play. It couldn't. Another thing was trying to get music lessons. I really wanted music lessons. I had an associate in school, and his parents paid for music lessons, but he didn't practice like that. I was like, man, this guy, his parents are paying for music lessons, and he's not really taking it serious. And I remember going to see the music teacher. One day we went to see this music teacher, and wow, he was like, "You wrote that?" I remember sitting at his piano, and he was like, "You wrote that?" I was like, "Yeah," and he had this weird look on his face, kind of like, "Are you some kind of reincarnation or something?" Right?
By any chance, do you remember what you might have played for that teacher?
Maple Leaf Rag.
Well, you did.
Yeah, I played Maple Leaf Rag.
Wow.
Yeah,
And this is without reading music. I mean, you taught yourself by listening.
At that time I was playing it by ear.
Could you play a little bit of that?
Sure.
And you were in grammar school when you did this. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Seventh grade. Actually 8th grade. At that time.
still, you were in grammar school, a young guy, hearing this music that you loved, and teaching yourself, and you just took to it. Remarkable. So, not only a remarkable pianist, but you started composing.
Right. Yeah.
In ragtime.
I could just tell you that hearing the music of Scott Joplin, I started at the top. I'll say that I started, and I knew it then. I said, if this man is the king I see why he's the king. After I saw, finally able to watch Sting, the movie, and I heard this, and I was like, I was able to connect the tune with the name. I was like, oh, the entertainer, and I was able to listen to his different songs. I began to realize, wow, there's so much you can express yourself within this style. There's so much. Well, Joplin's ragtime was very expressive. I think it's more expressive than any of the other writers, and I'm glad I started at the top. Some of the other writers, they just wrote it. It's just their music just sounds happy. Mm-hmm. He had that in his music, happiness, and it was sad, right? At the same time. And I developed that like with a. Let's see if I can play this. I'll try to play it to give you an example. This is one of my pieces. Something like a piece like that, it sounds happy, but actually it's actually sad, So that's what caught me about ragtime, the split dimension of emotions, and I don't know how to really say it, but it was more emotion going on all at once. It seemed happy, but underneath it, it was like a hidden sadness, really.
What was the name of that piece that you wrote?
That right there I wrote for a good friend of mine who's an activist in Sedalia, Missouri. Her name was Rose Nolan. I call it the Rose of Black Sedalia. Thank you.
And just a little bit more about Scott. He also, as you said, was this remarkable composer. But, he wrote an opera that was it ever performed? I mean,
not in his life. Well, he performed it once. Sort of was I guess it was. I don't want to say it the wrong way, or maybe it was an audition. But his Treemonisha.
Yes.
He actually wrote an opera before that. Before Treemonisha, he wrote a one called A Guest of Honor. Yeah, and that was around in 1903. And Treemonisha came out around 1911. He was completed around 1911. Yeah, he performed it once at the Lafayette Theater in Harlem, and it didn't make an impact on the people who were going to back it. So it never got anywhere.
Yeah. Interesting. You told me that he even felt that his music wouldn't be accepted, I guess.
Yeah, he saw that. He saw what he was. He went to New York and search of better opportunities. He left Chicago and went straight to New York, and it was tough there. I mean, it was so many other musicians writing. He was writing it just like this. I mean, he was the real king of ragtime, and whatever else he wrote. I say he was a king of whatever he wrote, because he wrote marches as well, and those were like, I mean, wow, his Antoinette is unbelievable. Yeah, but he really didn't have that much success in New York, and it was times were changing, and he had to put on his music, do not play this fast, because I guess he ran into people like James P. Johnson and Willie Lyon Smith. They were taking his tunes and really playing, they was going into stride. And he had to put a note on his music, like, do not play this piece fast. Right. So, but he also, would tell his friends that he thought that his music would not be appreciated until like 25 years after he had died.
That actually happened.
Yeah.
Years later. Yeah. A musical genius. Speaking of genius, you won the very prestigious MacArthur Genius Award. Was that 2004?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it was a real honor and a surprise. I had no idea. I've heard of I had heard about the MacArthur Foundation. If you're looking at a PBS program, you hear occasionally that they are funded by the MacArthur Foundation, along with other companies or groups, and so they look at one day. I'm looking, and I had been looking, trying to find work. That's another thing here, like playing the kind of music I play. It's like there's not a lot of support. Even to this day, it's not a lot of support for the kind of music that I play. And so I was down to the point of trying to find just a job to live, 9 to 5. And one day I was laying back. I said, well, I put in applications, need to walk around, and at that time they were still accepting paper applications. So I was doing these paper applications the week before, and I guess I remember the date because I know the date that they called, so I knew about when it was. I was putting in these applications. It was in the 16th, 17th of September, 2004, somewhere within that week. I don't know what the first day of the week was, but I started putting my applications in. But by the next week, the Monday, that was the 20th, September 20th, I'm laying back on the bed and I'm thinking, okay, which one am I going to follow up with, from last week to see what they think. And I could hear the phone ring, and I'll get up and look. I'm like, oh, John D. and Catherine T.O., what is this? Okay. So I picked it up. I knew what, I'm going to pick it up. And, what are they calling me for? And right, so the guy on the other end said, my name is Dan Sokolow, and I'm from the. I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it. Like I'm I think he said the president of the Fellows Program for the MacArthur Foundation. He's like, you've been selected as one of our MacArthur Fellows, and he said, and I could hear some people kind of like whispering in the background, and he's like, and what that comes with is if you're selected as a fellow, it means you get this award of $500,000. And I was like, he said, and I assure you this is not a hoax. This is what he tells me. This is not a hoax. You can call me back. The number here is that we're all secretly, privately enjoying this moment here in the office, and it will be released in the news in 8 days. But before then we need people. We're going to have some people to photograph you, and for the press has to have this information before the news media gets it, like the television media. So I was like, wow. And I didn't jump up and down, and I'm like, like you see some people when they win the lottery. I was just kind of going like, wow, Okay. So I got off the phone. He said, we're going to send you a letter, an official letter to, this is real. And I'll listen. He said, you can call me back. He kept saying that, you can call me back. It's not a hoax. So,
and the money could be used any way you want it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
Yeah, you do have to pay taxes on it, though.
Okay. Well,
I will say that you have to pay taxes on it, but it's. I think now what they did is they increased it. So back when I got it, it was like 500,000. Now I think it's 625,000. So that extra little bit, I think that people can take that and use it for taxes or whatever.
Did that allow you to really have the freedom to work on your music?
It did. It allowed me. Man, I'm telling you, getting the MacArthur was like. At that time, I was in an artist loft. I had moved into an artist loft on Madison and Holman, and so the artists in the building, everybody was like, "Oh, the artists that came down." There was like a crowd of people at my door. Everybody knocking, like, "Hey, we want to just tell you, congratulations!" But that was a great thing, great moment. And but with that comes, I don't want to go down and take up too much time. I just want to say, with that it's two ways. It's two things happen. You also have opportunities, but then your enemies start coming out the woodworks. So a lot of people, like I remember after getting to MacArthur and doing a show where I'm in a lineup of other pianists and we were all playing ragtime, and I'm like, man, for some reason it never felt like this before. Why everybody they save me for last, right? And I got to follow all these guys, right? And for some reason, everybody was doing their top stuff. Everybody was playing like George Gershwin, and I was like, "Oh wow, I gotta follow this stuff,"
Right.
And I guess they wanted to show me, "You a genius? All right, we'll see about that." Right? But I came out and I played what I played, Yeah.
Well, you deserve that, and you continue to write and continue to play. I've heard a lot of your compositions. Is there like a favorite one that you've composed even recently? I know you write a lot, and you're always writing.
One of my favorites is a piece that I wrote in. Well, it's not recent, but I wrote it in 1995, and it's a piece called "Sweet Envy." I can play just a little.
there some projects that you're working on now? You can tell us a little bit
Oh
about
yeah, I'm one of those projects is I'm working on actually two CDs. One is a re-release of a CD that came out 20 years ago, Man Out of Time, and I think that was my first. Well, it's the first CD of mine. I released three before for Delmar, but it was my first. It was my first self-release album, and the first album of all my originals. No, no cover songs. The previous ones always had like a Scott Joplin piece or a piece by some vintage ragtime writer, you know. And I was thinking like, nah, this one I'm gonna put all of my original pieces on it. I think my pieces are just as interesting.
Yes.
So, so Man Out of Time, which is it's in the original package design that I intended in 2002, but I didn't do that. Once I got the MacArthur Award, I kind of thought about it. I didn't pay for having the image like I wanted it to look, but I originally had like a spaceman on it. Yeah, that's what the title was referring to, a time traveler.
Yeah. You were telling me about a piece that you're working with, I think an artist out of Texas?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Right now I'm working on, we're in the beginning stages of it now, but it's going to be pretty big. We're honoring one of the ragtime classical black pianists, one of the great legends of American, music, John William Blind Boone, and he was in Columbia, Missouri, and so we're going to be doing some of his music that nobody's ever heard before. Right. Yeah, yeah.
Can you share a little bit of something you're working with on that?
Oh, I can do my best. Let me see if we.
Sure, let's get there.
This is a piece that he composed. I don't know what year it's from. It exists on piano roll. Maybe the sheet music will turn up in the research, but a piece that he wrote, probably in the 1890s, called Gavotte Chromatic, where he covers all of the keys. First theme of Gavotte Chromatic.
An appropriate title, because the harmonic progressions. That's so advanced. I mean, this was written in the late 1800s.
Yeah, yeah. Boone was no joke. He was like, he was a monster on the piano. There's some piano rolls that exist of his, that he made in like 1912 when he came to Chicago and recorded for QRS. And I mean, it's phenomenal. It's his touch. I mean, in his concert programs though, he played Beethoven, and this is in his programs. Franz Liszt, and it was nothing to him. He could play this, hear his stuff, hear these tunes like once or twice, and he could play it note for note. Mistakes included.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. Reginald, there's a place. You have a website, so we can go and find out more about some of your upcoming performances.
Yes.
And also purchase some of your music.
Absolutely. ReginaldRRobinson.com.
I cannot thank you enough for taking in some time to spend with us.
Oh, you're welcome. This is a pleasure.
Your beautiful music. We're honored, and we're going to continue to look out and listen for more of your music. And thank you. Is there anything you want us to know about Reginald Robinson before we wrap it up for the day?
Yes, I want to just say that I'm very dedicated to preserving black history, parts of black history that's really not known. And I've found some musicians that have been forgotten. There's one musician I'll name here. I'll never tell anyone, but I've come across his name. He was pretty big in Chicago. Robert Warfield. Yeah, and he had actually made produced some shows. I think he had I forget his collaborator, but he was one of the ragtime musicians that his brother was more well known than he is. Charles Warfield. Yeah, Charles Warfield is more associated with the blues and jazz, the early blues, like his piece, I Ain't Got Nobody. That one, This is Charles Warfield. I Ain't Got Nobody, and then what is his other piece? Baby, Won't You Please Come Home. Yeah, he wrote those amongst among many other pieces. But the younger brother, Robert Warfield, wrote. I think he may have written even more pieces. Yeah.
Well, on behalf of Black Muse, again, thank you. And can you play one of your original pieces as we
Sure.
wrap it up?
Let's see.
Remarkable, man. That's beautiful.
Thank
man.
you.